Welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. Today, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, interviews a high school strength coach who is creating a big time strength conditioning experience for their student athletes. Today's episode is sponsored by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr provides strength conditioning software to athletics programs around the country. Whether you write your own programs or want access to over 100 templates, TeamBuildr can make your program more efficient, more accountable, and smarter when it comes to measuring your team's effort in the weight room. Visit their website and start a 14-day free trial at TeamBuildr.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey guys, welcome to the 25th episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'd like to take a moment and thank all the coaches that have been on the show so far. Gage and I truly appreciate your willingness to sacrifice your time and share about your program. We also want to thank TeamBuildr for making this podcast possible. Hewitt and the rest of his team are doing awesome things for strength and conditioning coaches everywhere and continue to push the envelope in creating the top strength software out there. Hewitt wanted to give our listeners a special offer, so if you visit TeamBuildr.com and start a 14-day free trial and use the promo code BIGTIME, you'll also receive the following complimentary templates: in-season and off-season football, which include lifting and speed, general athlete development program, which is 3 phases that are 12 weeks long, and a Gameday CNS Prep Session. Check out the show notes for the direct link. Now let's get to this week's episode with Coach Rob Brokaw. Coach Brokaw is the head strength and conditioning coach for the North Bend Central Tigers, teaching strength and conditioning classes and supporting the athletic programs. He is also the defensive coordinator for the football team. He has a deep desire to become a great coach and help build up student athletes to their full potential. In his quest for knowledge, he created the Nebraska High School Strength and Conditioning Clinic to bring some top minds in strength and conditioning into Nebraska to help develop high school programs. For more information about the Strength Clinic, please visit his website that you'll find in the show notes. Rob is also Nebraska's state director for the National High School Strength Coaches Association. He and his wife of 9 years, Megan, live in North Bend with their 3 kids, Piper, Clara, and Jordan. In this episode, we discuss Coach's road to where he's at now, how he's making the big time where he is, how Coach organizes his weight room and uses systems to be efficient, resources that Coach uses regularly, Coach's training program, and much more. Here's Coach Brokaw. Coach Brokaw, it's awesome to have you on the show. I've been able to get to listen to you a couple times, talk to you a couple times, and one of the things that I've always noticed is you're on fire for the profession, you're on fire for your student athletes. And I wanted to kind of open this up, and I wanted other people to get to know you. What's kind of your strength and conditioning background? How'd you get to where you're at right now? And what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's been a non-traditional approach that I've taken to get to where I'm at North Bend Central in the heartlands of Nebraska here. I started out exercise science degree at Nebraska Wesleyan, where I played football, and I kind of before that had a rough time trying to establish myself as what you would call an athlete, because I wasn't. I was 330-pound junior that wanted to play football at the college level, but couldn't quite move or do anything to get myself to that spot. I had a knee injury and then ended up dropping like 100 pounds doing everything wrong, but still had a lot of learning experiences from that. And then that turned into an exercise science pursuit. Just decided to pursue exercise science, and I found that I actually loved the gym and the ins and outs and the behind the scenes stuff more than I actually liked the field. So I went, after graduating from there in 2009, to the corporate fitness industry, thinking I can have a good impact on the world in that capacity, and the pay was pretty good, so I decided to go that route, and ended up volunteer coaching with a former teammate at Nebraska Wesleyan, and that turned into a varsity football. It was junior high at first, and then turned into a varsity football position. And then I decided that I needed to leave my nice, cushy job holding executives' hands from one station to the next to moving into the education field, but I didn't have a teaching certificate, so I became an elementary para. So I was checking times tables tests and helping kids out throughout their elementary careers. all the while trying to build a strength and conditioning program, because I knew that the kids that were at the school, man, if we could just get their strength and conditioning going, they would be a lot more, healthy throughout the season, and we'd have some good success, and every kid in the school could really benefit from this. I then got promoted to librarian at the high school. So I was a librarian and the ipso facto volunteer strength coach and coaching football and track and any other hat that they could give me. I ended up going back and getting my teaching degree, but as I was doing that, I decided to start a strength and conditioning clinic because I was traveling all over the country trying to get as much information as I could. And then in that whole journey, I became the first paid strength and conditioning coach at that school. And with that experience and then subsequent certificate in teaching, I landed a job 15 minutes down the road as a full-time strength and conditioning coach for the North Bend Central Tigers. And I've been there. This is my third year now.
That is quite the road. And
I know it's, I'm sure I took a few shortcuts in the explanations there, but yeah, that was the path. No graduate assistantship, no other thing. It was literally connections, a lot of hard work, a lot of meetings, and a lot of people getting tired to listen to me talk about how much we really need strength and conditioning, and they just kind of gave up. So let me do my thing.
That sounds awesome. You knew what you wanted, you chased after it, and now you're landed out. That's quite the story, just to be able to share with, students, probably also just being able to help mold those people that you spent so much time getting to that spot so you could work with them, right?
Yeah. I've had some, with the local college, we've had some interns come through, and I'm like, man, if this is what you want to do, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. That's for sure.
Very cool. So the namesake of this show is kind of making the big time where you're at, and one of the things that I want you to explain to our listeners is maybe in a way that is unique, that you're making the big time where you're at.
Yeah. So the first time I heard about Frosty Westering was at a clinic in Michigan. I drove up to Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's like a 14-hour drive from Nebraska. And I went to go see Dan John because he was there. Right. And I didn't know these other cats at this clinic, but one of them was Dan Reeves. And then the other one was the godfather of high school strength and conditioning, Ben Davis High School, Coach Vanderbush. And he talked about this book, Make the Big Time Where You're At. And he's like, it's out of print. You won't be able to just go buy it. And, that day I got on my phone and got on Amazon and bought it. It was like $35, but you get his point that it was out of print. And I bought this book and I read it. And if those of you that haven't read it, and if you listen to this podcast, I would hope that you have, but it's like the John Gordon books, but like way before John Gordon. Like, it's really good, story involved. It's like, the way, Jesus Christ telling the stories, right? Like, you got to have that analogies and all that kind of fun stuff. And it's really good. But I'm reading through this book and I got through it and I was like, you're right. It doesn't matter what the logo is. It doesn't matter. That shouldn't be my goal. And at the time it kind of was. I wanted to be, I'm in Nebraska, so I want to be, the next strength coach at Nebraska. I want to do the big things at big places. And, it was like, that's not really what my philosophy is. I kind of want to, wherever I'm at, that's where everyone wants to be, and it's kind of bizarre. When I came in for my interview at North Bend, the athletic director was giving me a tour of the place, and he was like, yeah, I was part of the, I asking him questions about his past because he was the football coach and he was actually the strength coach, the PE/strength coach there before. And I said, well, what, where are you from and all that kind of fun stuff. He's like, I was at Midland University, which is the campus close to us. And we made the NAI playoffs in 1980 something. And he goes, we actually played Pacific in the playoffs. And I go, Frosty Westering, right? And he goes, how did you know that? And I'm like, make the big time where you're at or where you are. And he goes, no, what do you mean? So I had to bring him the book that next day. I was like, this is the guy you played against when you were, he was the coach of that team. And it was this bizarre situation. And it kind of felt like this, like you were saying, you know, your unique story and where we're at. And it just kind of felt, I could do that here. You know, we could make the big time. And it was almost like a calling, if you will. But I got the job, and the first thing I did was I wanted to make sure that I tried out there, you know, before seasoning it with my flavor. I wanted to take a bite of the steak. So I saw what they were doing before and just kind of saw ways that I could improve upon it without overbearing everybody, because some of the first things that I learned were you can't do too much right away. Like, you have to slow play it to get these kids and their parents to trust you, but two, sometimes when you just throw the book at everybody, kids will get lost and confused and scared all at the same time. So I think we're making the big time where I'm at by just really taking my time and realizing that I have years with these kids, and I have years to develop a program, and I have years to build this thing into something. Just taking my time and figuring out what's going down, you know. Looking at that graphic in the book, you know, making the road. The goal is not the end of the road. The goal is the road, and that's kind of what we're doing now. Is really just taking the long approach, the long way home, if you will, of getting kids better, developing them, meeting them where they're at, and then developing them into some successful student athletes. You know, and that goes from everything from equipment to, you know, taking teams to playoffs that don't normally make the playoffs, to all staters, to state champions, to, I mean, that's all part of it, but really the process and developing the systems and putting things in place to where we could really do something big.
I think that you kind of nailed that on the head as far as a unique way, because a lot of people, you know, like even myself, when I got the job, there were so many things I wanted to do. And I wanted to do it so fast. And I think what you said, you know, taking your time like that's got to be, you know, just for you to have that mindset has to be so relieving to say, you know what, you know, this is where we're at right now. This is where I want to go, but we're going to go one step at a time. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, because you want to be, you know, go and hit certain numbers and benchmarks. But what was it, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, if you haven't hooked onto his stuff, ask Gary V, talks about macro patience, but micro speed. So having kind of in the long game is always in your mind, but for these little things, you need to act quickly and swiftly, but always have that long-term approach in mind. I like that quote a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned John Gordon there. And one of the things I think about is he talks about having like this telescope type of view, where you can see, you know, the whole sky, the whole, you know, like you're looking at this really, really broad area, but then being able to focus it down and having the microscope type of view also. And I think that kind of plays along with what you're saying. You know, it's just like being able to switch back, and kind of seems like, you know, you can see that big picture, but then you focus it back down and say, okay, this is also what we need to be focusing on at the time. You know, when I've listened to you before, I can tell how methodical or planned out or organized you are with what you do. And I want you maybe to talk to that just a little bit, maybe some of the systems or organization that I know you take a lot of pride in. What's that look like within your guys' weight room?
Yeah, so I'm sitting in my office right now, and if you came in my office, you'd be like, this is the most unorganized person I've ever met in my entire life. I got stuff everywhere, but it all makes sense to me. when you walk into my weight room, I mean, I've had coaches. I mean, we have a small weight room. It's nothing too huge or spectacular. We got 8 racks. We got, dumbbells, kettlebells, CMBs, and, everything kind of just makes sense. Like everything in my weight room has a purpose and a place. So when something's out of place, it's really noticeable. Like if you walk into the room, something like the plyo boxes aren't where they're supposed to be, you're going to go, that doesn't look right. Even if you had never stepped into my weight room before, you would notice that. And that's all for a purpose. Everything that we do is to maximize. I mean, we have a 52 minute class period, and I give them 3 minutes after they get done with after the tardy bell to get into class, and I give them 7 minutes before the dismissal bell to get done. So now we're down to 42 minutes of class. So we've got to get a large amount of things done in a short amount of time, and everything has to be geared towards that goal of maximum efficiency, safety, and efficacy. Like how fast can we get to where we're going, and let's make sure that we're doing it in an extremely safe manner, because there's not too many rooms in the high school that you can die, and the weight room is one of them. So we got to make sure that all of those things kind of correlate with each other. From the second those kids walk in the room, I have something for them to do. There's a routine. They do it right away. One of the biggest things is, in physical education, is physical activity time. On-task behaviors, on-task activities. Are they moving where, in the time frame that they come into class? Well, I'm already giving up 10 minutes of my class, 10 minutes of my 52-minute class for them to change. So that's physically, they're not being active at that time. So we want to make sure that as soon as they walk in, they're ready to rock and roll. And if they come in and they have to look at it, they have to look at a sheet of paper, and then they have to find the equipment, and this equipment isn't where it's supposed to be, and something's in the wrong spot. Well, then they're going to spend time doing that, or spend time figuring things out. So it's really important to me and to everybody in the class. We finally got to that point where it's important to everybody in the class that we do things in a certain manner, in a certain order, and a certain way. To help facilitate that, I have a couple of things in place that they'll learn right off the bat, and that is our rack positions. So we have 8, like I said, we have 8 racks in our weight room. We put 4 kids to a rack, and we actually label positions within the rack. So, basically 1 through 5, if you're facing the rack, you're in kind of that spot and bench position. That's 1. And then it scales all the way back down to 5. And then if you're on the left side of the rack, it's negative. If you're on the right side of the rack, it's positive. So when you look at our workout for the day, you're going to see like bench press, tear aparts, and single arm row with a spot. So spot has 1 next to it. Bench press has 2. Tear aparts is at -3. And then single arm row is in 3+. So every kid's going to go grab their equipment. They're going to go to an exact location within their rack, and then they're ready to go. To go with that, everything is on the efficacy portion of it. Everything's on a timer. So I use just a Boxing Pro timer on the Apple TV. So we have a nice big screen in the middle of the room. I hit play, and away we go. So that kind of any system that I can put into place to where if I'm gone, the show goes on. That's what I'm going to be looking for. And it's really paid off. I think substitutes absolutely love coming to my class, because literally all they have to do is press play at a certain time, and the kids take care of the rest.
I've recently here, my grandma just passed away, and we were in that situation. And for whatever reason, we're not getting substitutes very well in our area. And so like my principal or athletic director or just like some other teachers are helping cover for classes sometimes. And one of the things that is a comment is kind of what you're saying. It's like, oh man, I said, I don't want to work myself out of a job, but when they come in, the kids know what they're doing, and it's just kind of like, okay, get your stuff, get started, here we go, and
Yep.
and that's something that I think I've heard you say that before. I also heard Kevin Vanderbush say something like that too.
Yeah.
It's one of those things though, that you're leading in the right way. When you're gone, it can still function. And I love that. Exactly. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. No, and that was, we had Kevin in Nebraska to present for our clinic, and he came into the room, and I made it a point when he came in to go and talk to him and have my back turned to my class, because I knew that he was going to watch and see what happened when I had my back turned to my class, how things were running. And without a doubt, I'm talking to him, and I intentionally, you're not supposed to, you don't want to turn your back to the class. So it's not something you typically want to do. But he was looking at the class as I had my back turned to him, and nothing stopped. It was kind of a cool thing. One of those things that it was like, this is good, and it means you're doing something. I thought I had the same thought process too. But man, you those that are one of us, one of the strength coach knows that it's the coach that gets them into that frame. Somebody could take and I've given everything of mine away. Like I will hand you, carte blanche, everything that I have. And unless you are a good coach and are going to build upon what I'm giving you, it's not going to work as well as what I'm doing, in my classrooms. Like I have just complete faith that it's the, we know it's the coaches. It's not necessarily the system. It's the coach. So that's part of it, but it's a lot of fun to hear other coaches say that too, because I've had that same thought process.
Yeah, no doubt. What you mentioned, like a timing, boxing timing thing that you put up on a screen. What are some of your other, and you talked about also your rack positions, like how to move within the classroom. Are there any other resources or tools or software apps or other systems that you optimize for your training, just for that workflow?
As anytime someone has a system in place, or that recent book that I have in front of me right now called The System, I'm all about something that's going to be, the like we were saying, even when the creator is gone or something, they continue to work together no matter what. Like even when the originator is gone. I think Dan John had a good quote on that. It's like, systems aren't, a series of programs. They're not a series of this. It's a collection of parts like mousetrap that work together. Even if the person who initially hits the button is gone, it's still going to continue to work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So anytime I come across something that I could see being taking a systematic approach to programming, execution, to anything like that, I'm interested in. So I came across some of Dan John's work again, of just routines and approaches to things. So my warm-up is one big system. I have a series of about 4 or 5 different warm-ups that my kids will go through. So I'll throw up on the whiteboard or on their on their TeamBuildr account, which is another system, app approach. They'll, regular warm-up. So when I say regular warm-up, come in, the kids know they're going to grab a bell. They're going to do the Cook series carries. They're going to do bootstrappers. They're going to do goblet squats. They're going to do a single arm row, a single arm press. And then they're going to start working goblet squats and then inchworm out and do their push-up complexes. So again, just hit play. Kids know what to do. Away we go. 2 are flows. And I kind of stole this from a group of people, but the big collection that I got was from, it was, what am I thinking? DeFranco and Jim Diesel Smith. They had this series called Amped, and it's basically a collection of flows, which is kind of like yoga. It's just one movement flows right into the next, flows right into the next. And I started incorporating those into warm-ups, and I actually kind of got used to the idea. Gary Schofield had another thing that I could plug right into a flow of activating the central nervous system, just by doing like single leg isolation holds, and then like a gaucho into another one, and then like jump around, imitating jumping rope, and then just having kids kind of fire that central nervous system to get their blood boiling and the central nervous system fired up a little bit. And then I actually plug those into another app that's kind of like pro boxing time. It's called Seconds Pro. And I got this one from Mike Booley, who uses it with his athletes down at Clemson. And it's basically, it's like the boxing pro timer, but I can change the time, from second to second per round. And then I could actually have them say what the athletes are going to do at that time. So I could pre-program an ankle and T-spine flow for the kids to do. So then I don't have to worry about keeping my eye on a clock the whole time. I can just coach. So I can go through and work on the kid who has really bad ankle mobility while we're going through the ankle portion of our ankle T-spine flow and not lose count of everybody else in the class. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll tell them to move on to the next movement, inchworm down, do one perfect push-up. Okay, now we've got right side reach throughs for the next 25 seconds, ready, go. It'll say that, and I can just coach the whole time, which is pretty nice. After they get done warming up, we roll into, I just started, we just got a bunch of iPads from our Spanish department, which is awesome. We got logged into TeamBuildr. We've been logging, I've been having the kids log into TeamBuildr for just over 2 months right now, and the data is awesome. I love being able to take a systematic approach to keeping track of volumes and intensities across, a whole wide spectrum of ages and abilities. I have 9 through 12 athlete, non-athlete, all in the same class. So being able to make small adjustments for kids that are a little bit more advanced to those advanced for high school level, and then those kids that are at an absolute never touched the weight in their entire lives, being able to take that on an iPad now and have them record absolutely everything that they're doing in such an efficient manner has really been a blessing. And then from there, we have our online curriculum pieces like we were talking before the show. With Canvas, I can plug in all of my curriculum, scope and sequence, lesson plan, or lessons for the week, quarter, semester into Canvas, which is our school's online platform for lesson delivery. And I do a flipped classroom to where I'm not taking any activity time away from the kids during class. They can do their reading comprehension, all the boxes that we need to have checked in terms of standards. I can do that in Canvas in a very similar systematic approach to where if a kid's gone for whatever reason and they miss Thursday, they're still going to get the lesson via Canvas. So any time I can come across some sort of a system or some sort of approach that's going to allow me to coach, like if I can be on the floor and coach more, that's what I want to do. The less time I'm behind a screen logging data or interpreting things or trying to come up with the next best thing, I'm missing out where it really matters, and that is coaching, making the impact and having the kids learn the movements and cue them up and demo it up. And then you could start going into the conscious coaching Brett Bartholomew stuff. I can have time to execute and talk in color and utilize all those approaches that some of these really coaches are really amazing coaches putting out fantastic material. I can actually apply it to my class rather than being worried about so many other things that I need to worry about to get my class from point A to point B. Hopefully that makes sense. That was a lot of words.
That was awesome. That was a great explanation for the whole deal. And I was recently talking to an instructional coach at my school, and one of the things that they do is within the regular classroom, like what we would call like English or math or any, like that regular classroom. A lot of times we have discussions of what does that actually look like within physical education. And when you talk about like the flipped classroom and being able to use Canvas, our school uses like Google Classroom. It's one of those things where, like you talked about being able to hit some of those things, those standards that you need to be hitting within, all classrooms, right? Not just math, English, or science. It's also within physical education. And I really connect with being able to do that, because I do think that physical education is a vital part to any student, not just athletes, to their well-being and to their health, and obviously for a lifetime of wellness. And one of the things that really sticks out to me when you say that is when you have these systems, you have the opportunity to like be able to adapt and modify, and like students know what to expect at some level, right? They know that you're going to be organized in the way that things flow. And then sometimes it allows you to be able to go and implement what you're talking about, like coaching in color, or being very, very specific in how you're coaching and being able to interact in certain ways. It just opens so many things up to be a great coach. And I really like just being able to hear another coach's perspective and how they do that and what that looks like, to be a really well-rounded teacher that's not just coaching strength and conditioning, but really investing within the student's well-being. So great job with that.
No, and a couple of things there is like, you were talking about how important physical education is. I mean, in all reality of all the things that the kids are learning in school, and I've had some really good conversations on this, is like, it doesn't really matter what they're learning, and especially in this day and age when Google is right there to answer every question, it doesn't really matter if you know what year something happened anymore. It doesn't. It's the process of learning how to learn and then go from there, learning the routines, learning about consistency, learning about, upping your physical literacy, your ability to actually execute the movement, not just know what the movement is, develop mastery within certain movement patterns. It's so important that it gets lost. And that's kind of the great thing, and not to go off on another platform, but the great thing about organizations like the NHSSCA is that we as a collective group of, something crazy, tens of thousands of high schools across the country, everyone's got a strength coach, or most of them have a strength coach, to really make an impact of those collected voices. If we can get all, as Stu Venable from Lincoln High would say, singing from the same hymnal, we could all get on the same page. We could actually make effective change in how PE is perceived in these, core subject matters. I think PE is a core subject matter, as I'm sure everybody listening would agree. It's definitely a core subject matter and should be taken seriously. But in addition to kind of what you were saying on the system side of things, when you're worried about this group over here and what set they're on, did you guys do all 3 sets? Or are you doing, if you're counting and you become a glorified, rep checker, you're definitely going to be missing out on a lot of things. So anything that takes that off of your plate is going to allow you to do a lot more in that short time frame that you have with them every day.
So that's something that, like I think about too, is we do rest periods within like the first main lift. And then after that, we kind of like open it up and we don't hit times. We don't do any of that. And I have seen it work extremely, extremely well. Very similar to what, like I see some of your videos and how the weight room is moving and flowing. And like, I really, really like that. And one of the things that I started doing though, with like juniors and seniors, is opening it up like that and allowing them to have that freedom. That's kind of the experience that I had within college, is everything would be rest periods and all that would be dictated to us for the main lift. And then after that, it's kind of up to you to kind of push that tempo or help lead people. And it was something that I found a lot of growth in over my college career, and then being able to kind of see that or drive people towards that within high school. So I see benefits on both sides. What would you say is one of the number one reasons that pushes you towards being able to kind of, I don't know, use a timing system in that way?
No, that's a really good question. For the most part, it's idle hands, when you, and if you talk to any high school, and this is a really elementary, type watered down answer, but it is the answer. Idle hands lead to the devil's play. They're gonna be farting around too much. If I give them 1.5 minutes of rest interval without anything else to do, they're not coming back. Most of my kids will take that 1.5 minutes and they're going to start messing around with something, or they're going to do something that they shouldn't be doing. And then I become a glorified babysitter, so I'm constantly wanting to give them something to do. And like we were saying, those short class periods, Gary Schofield always says, what's a rest interval? What do you mean rest interval? There's no such thing as a rest interval. For one thing, I only got so much time in a class period, and for another thing, when are they going to rest when they're playing? So we're trying to get them working into that capacity, and I get it. There's too much science behind rest intervals to act like they don't exist. But for the most part, what I'm trying to do is optimize the time that I have with them.
Yeah.
So on our big movements, I'll do fillers, is what I call them. So I will do some sort of an upper body or lower body, depending on what we're working on at that time, filler. So when do you do your, anything is stretching or small movements, prehab things, your tear aparts, your single leg banded axes, when do you do your TKEs, all that kind of fun stuff. That's when I'll fill it in. That's their rest interval.
Mm-hmm.
So when they get done with their main movement, they're going to go into some sort of a filler. And that's kind of just show them that you can do all this stuff and not spend, an hour and a half in a weight room. We can get it done in a short amount of time. I mean, and that's the other cool thing about TeamBuildr is I'm plugging in everything that they're doing. And you can do that, at a glance, quick stats. So for the rep count of the current date selected, if you do what was it on? So tomorrow on the 12th, date selected, they're going to be doing 400 repetitions. You know what I mean? Now, are all those repetitions main movements? No, I've got Messier squats, TKEs, like we were talking about, pistons, rear delt raise. I got a bunch of lower intensity stuff. But we're packing 400 repetitions in one workout, and I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to get every rep in. They're going to have ample time to get everything done in all the transition periods, and it's pretty slick. There's going to be 31 kids, and out of those, my fifth period class, I got 31 kids, and out of those 31, you're looking at 15 freshmen and about 6 sophomores. So primarily underclassmen that don't have much lifting underneath their belts as of yet, and they're going to get every one of those reps in. So I want to make sure that we are as efficient as possible with our time. And if the other thing that allows me to do is really have kind of a parameter of, can we add this to our routine or not? So like you go to a clinic and you see something and you're like, oh, that's kind of neat, but is this going to work for my program? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the first thing that goes into my mind is, how can I plug this into my system? So, for example, at that Shape, Nebraska conference over this last weekend, we talked to, or one of the presenters, Stu Venable and Matt Birch from Lincoln Public Schools here in Nebraska. They talked about incorporating sprint workouts into your weights training class. And I was like, they get sprints when they're in their sport. Like, that's what I based everything off of. They're running in their sport, you know? And they came across the idea of it's almost like a replacement for plyometrics. Like, you're learning how to run, but at the same time, you can almost replace your plyometric reps with these reps, and they're getting a different approach to training that is sprinting, and they basically sprint in every sport that they're playing. So how does that not cross over? This is something you should focus on, kind of a way, right? So what I decided to do was I'm going to take my Tuesday, Thursday, we're going to take one of our tiers out, and we're going to plug in sprint drills. We did it this last week, and it was without a doubt, I got 5 minutes or 6.5 minutes to do this. And this is how long it's going to take, and we're done, you know? Whereas if I tried to approach something in there and I didn't have that timing system in mind, there's too many questions up in the air to see if we're going to be able to get something done, you know? But yeah, I think that was a really good question. There's a lot of things that tie into my timing system, and you know, that was a few of them. But I do go OTC is what I call it. All the, you know, OTS, Dan or Joe Ken, OTS off the script. We go off the clock. So I'll give them some sort of as particularly in between seasons, we'll go, okay, we're going to do a pull circuit. So something along the lines of like pull-ups, PVC curl, rear delt raise, and a barbell row. Okay. You've got 2 sets of 15 reps, everything, OTC, go, you know, and then whatever time they have left, you know, like you were saying, they can kind of push themselves, push each other to where they can go a little bit faster than, you know, our perceived rest intervals. So I do play with it a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, that's probably twice a month, if that.
Yeah,
I do that with.
That challenges me a little bit to really think through if I'm doing it the exact way that would be the most efficient or the best. And kind of what you talk about is, you know, like that is something that would hold. I'm just thinking specifically one of my fresh soft classes right now, where I'm thinking, okay, this would hold those people a lot more accountable all the way through it, where I'm not having to babysit as much in that one. Where other classes, I really don't have to worry about it. I've got some fresh soft classes that they just kill it, and I don't have to do that. But there would be some of those headaches where, you know, like I wouldn't have to hold their hand through a couple of the things after the major movements, and I think that's going to be something that I have to look at just a little bit more and figure out if that's something I'm going to do in the future. Because really, I mean, when it comes down to it, if, you know, like I'm very similar to you, I think I've got 41 or 42 actual working minutes, you know, for most of my class periods anyway. So, you know, am I utilizing every one of those minutes the way that we should, especially when we know, you know, we're getting these athletes 3 to 4 times a week if they're within our class, you know. Is that going to be over the long haul, 4 years? Is that going to be the dose of training that they need to become the best that they can be? You know, and
100% over the long haul, without a doubt.
Yes. Yeah. Right. The kind of the slow play that you're talking about earlier with how you implement things. Same thing with how we're helping develop athletes, right? And just over the long haul.
You know, the Angela Ducksworth in her book Grit talks about having kind of these top level goals and then these mid-level goals and then low level goals. And I think that my timing system and things of that is kind of a mid-level goal. So my top, like you were saying, my top level goal, you know, make the big time where I'm at, you know, how can I get the most over the long haul, create this fantastic program that I'm hoping to create. I think that the one of those mid-level goals is really trying to optimize that use of time. How much time do I have with them? How can I get the most out of those minutes? And if you're calculating it down to the second, I don't know how much more you can get out of every minute that you have with them, right?
Right. I agree. I think that has to be something that I at least look at with as good of points as that you put out there, you know. And I also like the being able to classify your goals a little bit. That's an exercise that we used to do a little bit with just thinking through our program. Also, you know, like the overall culture of things. It's good to kind of reassess where you're at, where you're going, and I really like that idea.
Yeah, cool.
Could you speak to a little bit of like how your programming looks like? What's some of the methodologies you follow? Maybe what your actual weight training program looks like within your overall system that you've got going on.
Yeah. So for the most part, I'm a modified tier system approach. Joe Ken, Strength Coach's Playbook. If you haven't read it, read it. It's awesome. I can't recommend that enough. I like the idea of doing working the entire body every day, total body, lower body, upper body. I like the classification of exercises and that systematic approach, again, to rotating the exercises to make it work for you. The other thing I like about the tier system is it allows you to play with periodization really any way that you want. I'm Nebraska, so Husker Power, Boyd Epley, linear periodization, 3 sets of 10, move on to, go from hypertrophy to strength to power. Just, that's kind of been my mantra since forever, right? Since I was in high school doing Husker Power, that's what we were doing. But every now and again, you get something thrown in your face and it makes you rethink things. Kind of like the Brett Bartholomew book, conscious coaching was like, holy crap, I'm doing this wrong, or I should really take a look at how I'm doing this. And that book that just came out, The System, the Soviet periodization adapted for the American strength coach, Johnny Parker Miller, Rob Brokaw. If I said that wrong, I know I said that wrong, but it's basically this Soviet approach to doing things. And I thought I knew, but I had no idea. I was Bondarchuk and the Dr. Yestis and all the stuff that Cal Dietz kind of brought to the limelight with triphasic training and really looking at the transfer of training into your sport. I thought that's what it was all about, but I start looking at this book and they start taking more of a consideration into reps, which to some of the audience or some people that are listening, they're like, duh, like this has been around for a really long time. I had never heard of it before. So I'm reading through this book and I'm going, holy crap, this makes a lot of sense. Again, over the long haul, if I could tell every kid that, okay, so here's a senior in my class right now, and he's squatting 500 pounds and he's a beast and this is what this kid's going on. If I can do a snapshot of him as a 6th grader and I could say, okay, from the time he was in the 6th grade to now, this is how many reps of squatting he's done. Holy crap, I got a lot of work to do. That freshman kid's going to go, wow, I can really, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Taking that systematic approach and going rep by rep, 10,000 repetitions is something makes you a master of your craft, right? So like, who is that? That's Dan John, but it's Powell, the thrower from back in the day, said 10,000 throws is what you need to become a proficient at something. I think he got it from somebody else, but that's neither here nor there. But just the idea of taking the approach of repetitions and then playing with intensity levels of where those reps are at, kind of took linear periodization and flipped it on its ear and say, we're going to do this stuff all the time, So my weightlifting class or my sample of things, how we're going to do things, of up until like 2 weeks ago, and even now, I normally do a 3-day-a-week lifting schedule. So we'll start out with our warm-up, then we'll go into what I call a power tier. It's going to incorporate some sort of Olympic lift, a throw, a medicine ball throw of some type, and then a jump. And then from there, we go into our strength portion of things. Of a lower body, Monday we're gonna be doing our squat progression with our fillers, and then we'll finish with some sort of a pole segment. And then on Wednesdays we'll go into kind of a mixed set. We'll still do our power tier, and then we'll roll into like a unilateral approach, lower body, upper body, and then finish off with some sort of a posterior chain work. And then on Friday, Big Bench Friday. Then we go from bench press we still have our plyometric power tier before we bench, and then we'll finish off with some sort of arm farm / confidence building session. And then on our Tuesday, Thursdays, I call it supple tiger training. We'll go through a lot of our flow progressions, full time flows, lacrosse ball rollouts, banded stretches. We'll do a lot of movement-based activities, basically everything else. So we'll lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we do everything else on Tuesday, Thursday. What I've adapted to, because of I'm finding out by reading this book that we're not getting the volume that we really need to get proficient at movements. I'm spreading out the volume even more to a fourth day of lifting, and then we'll do everything else I'll do our supple tiger stuff on Wednesdays now. But yeah, that's kind of our typical approach to how we're doing things. The cool thing about this TeamBuildr is I can take a snapshot and share it with just about whoever you want. But if you want more of the ins and outs of the reps and sets and all that kind of fun stuff, I'm more than willing to share on that regard too.
That's one of the things I appreciate about you is how much you're open to just sharing about your program and implementing that. And kind of, you said it earlier in the show, it's like, it still comes down to if you're coaching it right? And it's like,
exactly.
Yes, you can get all these resources all over the place, but you still have to implement it in the right way. And I appreciate you being able to just be open enough to share with everyone and come on and just like, and just lay out your whole program like this. It's been really, really cool. I've got a couple more questions for you. And one of the things that we do as coaches, and it seems like you're doing all the time, you're referring to all these books and everything, is what are you excited about learning and improving on, this year as a coach? What's kind of one of your, top level goals that maybe you referenced from the book Grit, like what's one of your highest goals? My highest goal is to really for this year is to really get better at self-assessment. So where am I at right now as a coach, and what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Yes. But at the same time, it's like, what am I doing really, really well? How can I how can I triple down on those things and get the most out of them? But at the same time, make sure that I'm not missing out on anything. So my weak point training, if I had to work on my calves right now, my weak point training, it would be my feedback, my reporting of my feedback on a grandiose scale. So my feedback in coaching, I think, is really good. Like, I could tell you, okay, this is what you're doing wrong with your squat. This is how we can fix it. I think I'm pretty good at that. But I think what I need to have a better approach at, what I'm really excited to learn more about, is how I could provide kids and their parents with feedback. So like key performance indicators. How can I, Coach Vanderbush has an awesome thing that he can show his parents and his kids of, okay, you're a freshman right now. This is how much you weigh. Okay, the average freshman, by the time they're a senior, if you take every one of my classes and you do everything I tell you to, this is how much weight you're going to put on. This is how much you're going to squat. This is how much you're going to hang clean. This is how much you're going to bench press. This is how fast you're going to be, depending on how big you are. He has all these details from decades of data collection that he can tell these kids. And I've seen that, and I've seen some of the things that kids are that really big time coaches, I would call them, are feeding back to their kids and their programs and their coaches. And I'm going, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm missing the boat on that. So that's something that I'm really excited to really dive into this year, and get better at this next year, I should say. That's sweet. I think that's something that I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but that's something that I really need to improve upon too. Just data collection, data management, and being able to give that back in a way that's informative and effective in improving performance and motivation or confidence, or whatever we're trying to elicit from our student athletes. It's like, this is something that is important, and the way that we get it back to our athletes, with that awesome feedback. I feel like I'm in the same boat as you. I feel like I'm pretty solid at doing on the floor coaching, but the long term of, okay, from the freshman to a senior, or just like a look back over your career, that type of thing too. I want to improve upon. And I think you hit it right on the head. Very, very cool that you're going after that.
It's crazy. I went to my oldest is in kindergarten now, and they do this MAPS testing. I don't know if you guys do MAPS testing or NISA or something.
Yep.
And my kindergarten teacher goes, okay, here's where Piper's at right now. Okay. Her projected growth, because she started here, is here. So if she's there at, when we test out again as a first grader, that means we're on the right track. And I'm going, holy crap. If I could tell that to my kids and the parents that, we're on the right track or we're doing the right things, that would be massive. That would be so big, it would be really a telltale sign of, is your program working over the long haul? If you started here and you get to there, granted, that's going to take at least 10 years of data collection to be able to give them my version of it. I can't draw from anybody else because it's got to be for my program. But man, that's the stuff I'm looking really forward to.
I think that's something that I'm just ideas are rolling around in my head about how you could do that on a larger level. Right. And it seems like something that, as maybe the NHS SCA or some other organization could kind of attack a little bit, just like
and we could, that's the cool thing. Like we were saying, we have such a large body of people that you could really, and then you could do program assessment.
Right.
Is your program, we always constantly talk about evaluations. If we had something across the board that would be like, this is where your program is at, that'd be really big.
That'd be really interesting. I think that's something that at least some discussions should continue on out of that. And hopefully we could make some strides in that way, even if you could find, maybe you start small and you can find some other schools around the area or some other states around and start to compile, figure out what the key performance indicators are going to be. And if you can compile information, based off of repetitions that they've completed and all that type of stuff, I think it could span into something like that. Hopefully it doesn't take 10 years, but maybe it does. A couple cycles of people going through the program, maybe it has to be 8 years. I don't know. But that would be very, very cool. To move us on here, you've talked about a lot of different resources. What's some of your favorite professional development resources? And that could be books or websites or podcasts or anything like that. What's some of the things that you go to?
Oh, definitely. The NHS SCA has been, the last 3 years has been far and away one of the best things that I've been a part of, because it has introduced me to so many different styles of training and what coaches are doing from across the country. And then it also provided what a lot of us look for when we go to conferences and clinics, a little validation, are we doing things right and of that nature. But I would say the NHS SCA, with the constant updates that they're putting on the website, the Facebook, like we were talking about, the weekly live, the live chats with Gary at those different programs, you can see what's going on and you could listen and learn from coaches that you might not have been able to really ever know. You learn more from people and conversations than you do any other book or listening to a presentation. Just going to conferences and learning from people. Obviously presentations are a big part of it, but it really just opens up, those questions and allows you to really kind of dive into what you really want to know from those people. So those sidebar conversations, those breakfasts, I was fortunate enough to have breakfast with Mike Booley at a national conference one time, and I still will go back and grab notes from that. He was drawing on the tablecloth And I took pictures of it and was taking notes and whatnot. And I'm constantly going back to that to just get, to audit my program and to dive in on things conditioning wise, which is what we were talking about. And just people, like the biggest resources are people. And what's great about strength and conditioning, at least in our realm, is that everyone's willing to talk to each other. You could call Dan John right now. We could call him right now and chime him in on this conversation. And if he was available, he would talk for an hour and a half. Like that's the coolest part about this. If you have good intentions and you're going off on the right things, the people will talk. Coaches will talk to you. So, but yeah, that's the greatest resources. Books wise, I mean, I got them stacked. Listening to any resource that I can, but most of the time I get my recommendations from talking to those coaches. So I don't know what, chicken or the egg. That's kind of where I'm at there. But yeah, I would say the people are definitely coaches that you'll meet, getting out of your shell a little bit and making those contacts is probably the biggest resource that I have. It's also been, the source of some of my best friendships too.
That's something that, you talked about, just the connection, being able to talk to other people and learn so much from them. And that's where I find, like you said right there at the end, where, like I enjoy those conversations. There are people that are like-minded and are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. I thoroughly enjoy those because I learn so much, get to connect with other people that are doing the same thing as me. It's kind of cool. I think that, you hit it on the head with the resources there, just trying to have those conversations, and
definitely.
It's great. Thank you, Coach, for that. The last little bit here called the finisher. It's just 5 quick questions. I'm going to throw them at you. You just say your answer and we'll just keep on moving on here. You good?
All right.
Gotcha. What is your favorite caffeine source?
Oh, I'm a coffee guy. Gotta have my coffee.
Coffee, it doesn't sit well with me. I don't think. I think I have to spruce it up with a bunch of sugar or something, and then I'm okay with it. But what is your favorite quote?
Okay, so I just watched the movie. Oh shoot, it's on Amazon Prime Video. It's like I bleed for this. It's about this boxer back in the 80s, and I'm blanking on the name of the guy. It's like the Tasmanian Devil. But he said that it really is that simple. And it kind of stuck with me, and I wrote it down in my book. So that's probably my favorite right now. It really is that simple. Like we were talking about 10,000 reps. Yeah. You're telling me that if I just pick up this weight a whole bunch of times and I do it over and over and over and maybe add a little bit, I'm going to get stronger. It really is that simple. That's kind of my go-to right now. Yep. It really is.
No wonder you're like a big Dan John fan, right? Like that's kind of his mantra is like, do it a lot and do it right.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah. No, I think he has like the underpants gnome equation there from South Park. Underpants gnome, and they have this presentation. It's like step 1, steal underpants. Step 2, ? Step 3, make profit.
Make profit.
That's all. Yeah. That's step 1, lift weights. Step 2, ? Step 3, get strong. Like that's all you got to really worry about.
Yes, sir. What is your favorite hobby outside of training?
Oh, hobby wise, I mean, I try to play golf. That's something I'm not very good at it, but I like to do different sports. I mean, I can coach football too, so I guess you can consider that a hobby. But really, just hanging out with family. I like watching movies. I like mowing my yard and just kind of being a homebody, really. But yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Nice. Everybody's got to have those hobbies, right? Figure out something for you. Those are good. 15 minutes to train. So you don't have very much time, just 15 minutes to train. What are you doing for yourself? Mm-hmm. What are you doing?
Gonna do some sort of a complex, like one of the Javora complexes. Grab a barbell and do a whole bunch of movements. Or one thing I don't like running. I don't like, I don't like cardio in that sense. I do like, Cal Beats has this, I think he called it just big guy cardio. You take 50% of your max bench and 50% of your max squat, and you set them up in 2 side-by-side racks. And then for like 15 minutes, you just go back and forth doing 1 rep and keep your heart rate above, like, I think it was 80% of your, no, it was a little less than that, maybe 75% of your max heart rate. And then you just stay in that range. You just go back and forth, squat, bench, squat, bench, squat, bench. I kind of like that one. You get a good sweat going, and it's not running.
Yeah, it's not running. I might have to try that one. That's good. I'm kind of in the same boat. I like sprinting, but like steady state cardio, man, there's no shot.
No. Miserable.
Here's the last one for you. Small school coach who's killing it and deserves a shout out.
Oh, okay. So one thing that we do here in Nebraska that I started a couple years ago is the Nebraska High School Strength Program of the Year. So I do that. I try to go out and find these coaches that are doing a good job in Nebraska and kind of give them a spotlight for what they're doing for their kids. One for sure is Amber Burson over at Lexington High School. Granted, it's a much larger school than what I'm at, but it's still pretty small. She's doing a really good job. She's incorporating everything from RPR to powerlifting to, APRE to, every initial in the book. She's if she thinks it's going to work for her kids, she's going to do it. And she is a female in a very masculine world. So it's pretty cool that she's taken off the way that she is. She's doing an excellent job. And then Stu Venable, which I've mentioned a couple of times at Lincoln Public Schools, he's awesome, and the kids absolutely adore him. He definitely gets their attention and keeps it, and he's a big time nerd too. So he tries to get the most out of his minutes as well. So I would definitely say those two around here are doing some really good things.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to look both of those up. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So I've kind of got a list of different ways that listeners can contact you if they want to know more information. What would you say is your favorite way to respond or get in contact with people?
If you're not a member of the NHSSCA Facebook page, that's probably the best spot, not just for me, but everybody else that's in the area. Other than that, Twitter, Strength Coach Rob, and to fit it in the handle, I took out the E in strength. I do have a website for my clinic, Nebraska HSStrengthClinic.com. And then you could always email me, Brokaw at nbtigers.org, or you give me a call, 402-490-0122, call, text. I'm always up for talking shop.
That's great. Thank you for all those options, Coach. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you just taking the time to invest back into strength and conditioning, and I think you are definitely making the big time where you're at. So thanks again, Coach.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.